Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live video. Today it is Friday the 13th, January 13th, 2023, and I'm your host, Scary Holzman. And today what we have available for you is another mini PC review, but this time Beelink has sent me a mini gaming PC, and this might be the most powerful gaming PC in this form factor I've yet to experience. Now, Beelink's prior gaming PC, which is still out there available for sale, the GTR6, is a bit larger, right? So this one, I think this one's a bit smaller. And the folks at Beelink also sent me a BIOS update for the GTR6, which is supposed to quiet down the fans on it, which I didn't notice any noise whatsoever from the GTR6 that wasn't expected when we were pushing it hard, and it never overheated under Prime 95, which really surprised me. So this is supposed to be a step above that. Now, this retails for about $800. Amazon.com has a little coupon. You check a little box. There's no coupon code for $150 off. I don't know how long that deal's going to be there, so could be gone today for all I know. I haven't checked it, but the specs on this, you're looking at an AMD Ryzen 7 6800H CPU with 32 gigs of RAM, 500 gigs of NVMe storage. It's Wi-Fi 6 with a 2.5 gig Ethernet connector as well, and a smaller form factor than the GTR6. Now, later next week, we'll go through the BIOS update and that whole process with the GTR6 and then measure the fan noise before and after. They've asked me to evaluate that for them, and of course we'll be happy to oblige, and I'm kind of curious how their BIOS update applies. In most cases, if you have like the little Intel NUCs, this is obviously AMD, but with an Intel NUC, you just use the Intel driver and update assistant. You'll get your BIOS updates along with drivers automatically and for free from the source. When you deal with other manufacturers, proprietary manufacturers, you would go to their website or contact customer support, or if you register your product, they will reach out to you for things like BIOS updates. They generally try to keep that stuff distributed as needed to avoid any unnecessary support calls that could result from a BIOS update going bad or not being applied properly. So I can understand their caution and how they release the updates. Now, that being said, there's a couple people saying hello in the chat. Welcome in, everybody. Hello to our good friend Peter Laycock, who contributes £10 via Super Chat. Peter says, good evening, Carrie, and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 5 degrees Celsius. Well, thank you so much, Buster. Thank you for the earlier contributions as well. I've been working all this week getting computers out, and I've got one on my bench currently that I need to work on, and then I'm back to trying to figure out what's going on with that train PC. Haven't forgotten about you. Mike Visions with a £2 contribution says, hello, Carrie. Good day, he says. Good day, Mike, and thank you for the contribution. And Mats Olaf, hello to you in the chat, joining us all the way from Sweden. Luke Greenia joins us from Vermont. He says, no mini PC for me for a time. I had to order a new laptop. Yeah, well, a laptop's going to cost quite a bit more money, but you're also getting a screen and a keyboard and a mouse and speakers and a battery. So that totally makes sense to me. Ella Lindas joins us, says hello, as does Paul Garrett and Larry, LRCX, Kurt Schlegel, and Sherry McFarland in the chat room, and Randolph Slavin. Welcome in, guys. Good to see everybody. All those familiar names in the chat. Marco Malmstrom joins us, and Arto Reseman, and Diane, Northwest Chicago Burbs, USA. Welcome in. Kingsman contributes $9.99. Thank you for your support and your Super Chat contribution. John Jack Wilson says, Carrie, check your PayPal. Hey, a shout out to John Jack Wilson, because I was procrastinating shipping. I had a veteran's computer that had to go out, and it had to go from Phoenix to Florida. And it was costing me at the most $125 to pay for packing and shipping with insurance, a package across the United States. Like, that was the most it cost me back at Studio A, so a few years ago. The package I most recently sent was $179 for packing and shipping from Phoenix to Florida, which just about gave me a heart attack, because I don't know that the computer I was shipping was worth $200, but I was paying darn near that to ship it, and was about to sort of put in place a restriction from how far I was going to ship these giveaways because of the extreme expense. And John Wilson stepped up and said, I'm going to cover the shipping. And because of that, that veteran was able to get a computer, and he really wanted one. And it was just, I wanted to get him one, but it just didn't make any sense to spend as much that the computer costs to get it shipped. Now, moving forward into the future, it might make more sense for me to order directly off of Amazon. It just means I won't be updating it or improving the computer, giving it the carry once over. But since shipping and packing is all included in the price for a company like Amazon that's doing, millions of packages, the shipping is included. It's free anywhere in the United States. So I could place an order on Amazon and have that order delivered anywhere, and I'm paying the same amount of money without adding the additional cost of shipping. So that may be the way we move forward. Interestingly, it seems that more than half of the United States population lives east of the center. So if you look at the country of the United States and you draw a line down the middle, the vast majority of the United States population all lives to the right. That includes Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, all those places I keep getting orders from. And I've been so confused. I've been saying, where are all the people in California and Nevada and Utah and Colorado and Phoenix? I don't get many orders. And I just thought there's some weird phenomenon that more people on the East Coast watch videos. Well, as it turns out, there's way, way, way more people on the East Coast. And then there's just little populated cities on the West Coast, San Diego, LA, Phoenix, Vegas, Denver. But apart from that, it's just all mostly wide open land. So it's starting to make sense to me now. So I guess if I really wanted to build and ship computers, I should move to the East Coast, because that's where the majority of orders come from. However, again, a super shout out and thank you to Jack Wilson for his support in making that possible for that gentleman to receive his computer. I just had to ship another computer to Florida. That one was $152. So it's killing me. The shipping's absolutely killing me. Let's see. John says, check my email. Oh, he just sent $100. He says this is to support the channel. Well, right on. Well, again, I appreciate it so much, Jack. I appreciate your support, your kindness, your generosity, and I still have more veteran giveaway computers here that I will get around to, and I will earmark that money to help cover shipping. I know I can give away more if I wasn't spending so much in shipping. I could probably give away another computer. Let's say if I have 3 computers now, if I were to be able to ship them west of the Mississippi, I would have enough left over from shipping to pay for a 4th one. So, that's the debate. What do we do? Do we ship fewer, but get them out to the people who, are first, if you want to call it first? Or do we hold off and wait for qualifying folks in areas that aren't so costly to ship to? And I haven't made up my mind on that yet, but oh, here's another one. Thomas Backenstow with a $100 super chat says, this is to help the vets, Gary. I appreciate that so much, Thomas. And again, I want to remind people that YouTube will take 30% of anything you give me in super chat. So if you want to give anything over $20, I would encourage PayPal or Amazon gift cards. The reason for that is not only does YouTube take 30%, they make me wait up to 60 days before I'll see that money. And I have no way to refund it if you should change your mind. PayPal is a 3% fee, and Amazon gift cards is a 0% fee, and instant delivery. So, well, I appreciate it very, very much. And I don't mind, if you don't mind, that YouTube is taking 30% of it, but I just want you to be aware of that when you contribute any large amounts. And I thank you so much for your thoughtfulness and your consideration. And yeah, so now I've got, about $200 I can set aside for shipping. And depending on where it's shipping to, that may just cover one package with a little left over. Or maybe I can ship 2 if I'm shipping west of the Mississippi. Or maybe I get lucky and it's somebody local to Phoenix and I just drop it off to them and there's no shipping cost involved. I think that's happened twice in all the years I've been doing this. So we'll see how that rolls. And again, thank you so much for your kindness and your thoughtfulness. I appreciate it very much. And all right. So today, as I mentioned, Beelink had sent us their mini gaming PC. And they throw this word around, gaming PC. They being companies that manufacture products for computers. It could be a gaming chair, a gaming keyboard, a gaming mouse, a gaming table, a gaming monitor. It's ridiculous. Gaming CPU is one of the dumbest terms I've ever heard in my life. So if I'm going to label something as gaming, like in the title of my videos, then that's meeting my definition of gaming, which is you could actually play AAA title games. Maybe not at their highest, well, definitely not at their highest resolutions or settings, but the fact it'll play them at all is impressive when you consider the size of the package. Now, there's all different kinds of gaming. We've got esports gaming, retro gaming, MMORPG gaming. The list goes on, first-person shooters, blah, 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 and simulators, and et cetera. And different styles of games have different requirements for how they operate the smoothest, for the best experience, optimal experience. And generally speaking, when you want to buy a gaming computer, you're going to be purchasing about a $1,200 computer. And, of course, we can go onto sites like Amazon and Newegg, and we can find gaming computers for $600, but they're not going to play some games at all, and other games they're going to play in very low res with a low frames per second. So we're dealing with a little bit of wordplay here. Can it game? Yes. Does it game well? Depends on the game. It depends on what your expectations are. I think, based on everything I know about this, and I haven't, it's still sealed in plastic. I haven't opened it, but I did a little research on it. And this may be the most powerful gaming PC of this particular form factor. So you got to remember, we're going to be running off of integrated graphics built onto the CPU. And they're just getting better and better and better. So good to the point now that we can put it in a package this small and still play AAA title games, albeit at 1080. But nonetheless, if you want to play 4K and all the bell whistles on, you can spend the money. If you want to ride in a car of luxury, you'll spend the money. You're not going to get that in a Honda Civic. I'm just saying. So we set our expectations accordingly. But the fact that it can do it at all is, to me, very impressive with how far gaming's come. You look at an Atari 2600 from the 70s, early 80s, and that thing was much bigger than this. And, you're looking at 8-bit gaming graphics and sound, which was horrific. So I can't emphasize enough how impressed I am with the abilities of today's computers and how they're able to just get them smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, of course, if you want RGB and liquid cooling and overclocking and you want to configure everything, these mini PCs are not for you. If you've got a bunch of old hardware and you think you can get away with some cheap little computer to keep using your old monitor, that's a recipe for disaster. One of the worst things you can do is mix new with old. And when I say old, I mean more than 10 years old to something brand new. Somebody was asking if we could find one of these with a VGA port on them. Yeah, buy one from 10 years ago. I think there's some out there. Because the only reason you'd need that is you're trying to hook it up to a monitor that's probably over 10 years old, which would be sort of defeating the whole purpose of having a machine of this power if it's being sort of handicapped or crippled by the peripherals you're plugging into it. You're just completely negating it. So in my opinion, If you want to keep your old hardware, keep all your old hardware together. Don't mix old hardware with new unless you like troubleshooting a lot. So, and I just tell you that as a technician, because those people who do that are the ones with the least amount of money who can pay for service, and yet are the ones who will call the most trying to get service for free. Or in other words, tell me how to fix this myself type of phone calls and emails that are self-created and completely avoidable by not going down that path to begin with. That's my opinion, take it or leave it. But the good news is with an HDMI port on here, you can hook it into any modern television. Almost every single TV sold within the last 20 years has an HDMI port on the back, so you don't need a computer monitor for this. Let's open it up, see what's in the box, and we'll check out the Amazon page for it too and look at some of the specs. Everything you see in my video is live and unscripted. Nothing has been rehearsed or prepared, except I looked at a couple other reviewers looking at this Beelink, the SER6 Pro. Now they do have a non-Pro version. I think the difference is the inclusion of the Intel Thunderbolt ports, if I'm not mistaken, which most people wouldn't use, but some of you might. Some folks have asked if you can change these NVMe drives out in here with one that has a heatsink. For the most part, those heat sinks are just for show. They don't really do much. If you're that powerful of a user that you're running so much I/O that you're causing your NVMe drive to overheat, this is not the right vehicle for you. It's sort of like if you're towing a big boat and you have a little economy car that's overheating because it's not designed to tow that weight, you've got the wrong vehicle for that job. So, even asking those questions, in my opinion, it's sort of like you're trying to get something for nothing, and I'm just shocked because I just thought that would be obvious that when you're going to put yourself into a little package like this, space and heat are your two biggest sacrifices that you're going to make in order to get the package that small. And at the same time, it's so aggressively priced that for you to build a machine of these specs in a traditional desktop would cost you way more than this. But you would have that ability to do all those customizations. There's not much you can do for customizations with these. They're mostly ready to roll out of the box. Yes, you can upgrade the RAM. Yes, you can upgrade the storage. And that's pretty much all you're going to do. If that's not good enough for you, don't buy any mini PC. You will not be happy with it. On the other hand, if you're looking for something small, something quiet, something simple, something reliable, and in this case, something that can play AAA title games, and you don't want to put $1,500 into it, well, you can spend half that and get yourself a ready to roll out of the box. You don't have to open it. You don't have to do anything to it. Just plug it in and start using it. Well, then these are designed for you. We have a variety of computers to choose from in different size cases and RGB and glass and performance and RAM and storage to meet the individual needs of each individual who's making the purchase. So if you're trying to take something and manipulate it into something else, you'll likely spend more money and have more frustration than simply buying it as the engineers designed it to meet your needs mostly out of the box, in my opinion. Now, as a computer technician, it's some of the worst advice I can give you for my business. After all, I make a lot of money from people who make those kind of judgments and find themselves in over their heads and have to pay me to sort it all out for them. If they'd have just purchased what they wanted from the get-go, they'd have already been up and running the moment they got home from the store, and they wouldn't have to pay me to come and fix whatever it was they were trying to upgrade or make better than what it was as they purchased it. So you take that information for whatever it's worth, do what you're going to do, but do understand that as a professional technician, if you want a computer to last reliably and for a very long time, stop messing around with it. Actually use the computer. Actually use it. I see a lot of people, all they do is they just keep trying to improve performance, or they keep trying to stretch the boundaries of what the computer can do in benchmarks, but they never really use the computer for anything other than that. And that's all well and good. If you've got that kind of time and that kind of money, it can be a very fun but expensive hobby. But for the rest of us, the vast majority of us, don't get caught up in all those YouTube videos from those extreme enthusiasts. It's the extreme enthusiasts who are the majority of people who make videos. The people who just kind of, I use a computer, It's okay. Those people aren't making videos, but those people are watching them. So which one are you? And then bear that in mind when you are deciding whether or not to take the advice of some video you're watching or follow the steps if that aligns with your values. Okay, and understand why some of these people are making these videos that are just over the top and ridiculous. It's because they have a passion, and the money doesn't mean anything to them, and it's all about the passion. If you don't have that same passion, it wouldn't make sense for you to spend that money and go through all of that frustrating labor to get things dialed in when it's already been done for you by the engineers. So just something for you to consider to make a decision that's appropriate for your particular expectations, your budget, your needs. All right, here we go. It's getting exciting here. Oh, look at that. All right, so in the box, you'll see how this is packaged. Got an instruction manual. In just a minute, we'll get a close-up camera out here. But I wanted to do, before I go any further, is I want to look at the Amazon page for this product so we can take a look at the specs and the reviews that come from the general public, so you don't have to take my word for anything. We'll see what everybody's saying, what customers are saying about it. And let's see, this is the Beelink SER6 Pro. Now I do have a link for this in the video notes below the video. And they have, like I say, a non-pro version. And it looks like, well, it looks like they've already dropped the price. So today, it's showing the SER6 Mini PC with Windows 11 Pro. Oh, you know what? Let me share the screen. Hold on. I want to show you guys what I'm seeing. And you can read it right along with me here. So bear with me for just one moment. There it is. We'll bring that up. That should do it. I mean, in theory, this is what I have if I searched it correctly. That is a 6600H. We have a 6800H, so that maybe explains the price difference. Let me go back. SER6 Mini Pro. This is it here, the Beelink Ryzen 7. So they've got a couple of models here. I don't want you to get confused why they all say SER6 Pro. There's a couple different versions of it, and this is sort of the high-end version, the Ryzen 7 6800H. This represents what I have here in front of me. That is Windows 11 Pro with USB 4 that does up to 40 gigabits per second of data transfer. You can run up to 3 displays. They've spelled it as diaplays. The A and the S are next to each other on the keyboard, and somebody types too fast. It's got, basically, you've got 2 HDMI outs and a USB 4 that can be used, or the Thunderbolt port or the USB Type-C can be used as another video display. So a total of 3. 500 gigs of Gen 4 PCIe NVMe solid-state storage. It's got 2 sticks of 16 gigs for a total of 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM. It is Wi-Fi 6 with Bluetooth 5.2, and they list it as a gaming PC. And as we come down here, you'll see there's a coupon. You can apply $150 off. That's a heck of a deal. Of course, it wants me to sign in if I do that. Now, if we scroll down, what do we have for reviews on this? Anything yet? It's a brand new product, so maybe there's no reviews. So you see the GTR 6 that we reviewed a couple weeks ago. It's a bit more expensive. This may be the better value, and it's a bit smaller. Well, we'll see when we get it fired up here, but I am not seeing reviews on this yet. We get a look at the ports. You show video editing can be done on this. Or is that just audio mixing? Either way, they have a lot of information on the Amazon page. I always appreciate when companies do that. So it's such a brand new product, it hasn't been reviewed yet. I like that. That means that we got here before everybody jumps on the bus. And my mouse is going crazy. Okay, hold on just a second here, folks. Let me bring this page back up. And we'll take a look at these photos. I think this is all pretty much same information. This CPU, the Ryzen 7 6800H, has 8 cores with 16 threads, and it runs up to 4.7 gigahertz. It's got a dual fan design, which is surprising in a package this small. Lots and lots of I/O on this thing. And it's got a little wall mount bracket, which I don't use that, but you can get creative and figure out how you want to use that to mount this thing if you want it up and out of the way off your desk. So anyway, that's just a little familiarity with what we are about to do. And now let me switch over to the close-up camera and we will do this unboxing. Let's see, I think it's this button right here. There you are, come on over. All right, let's see what we have here. And while you're doing that, I want to go back and take a look at the chat room. And yeah. Okay, so we've got a user manual here, which of course, I don't think there's anything in here. I really don't know, maybe. And then here we've got what is traditionally, if you're familiar with the Intel NUC, this looks pretty much the same dimensions. Remember what I tell you about the plastic, how you're supposed to remove it? I imagine, and I haven't read this, but this probably says you need to remove this plastic. Is that what it says? I can't read it. During the system boot process, if you cannot log into your personal account, please turn off Wi-Fi and LAN. Oh, okay. And then what does the red say down here? Please peel off this mask. Does it say mask? Mesh? I can't read it. I don't know.
Please turn off this mask before using.
Peel off, not turn off.
Peel off, yes.
And then, yeah. So, I'm not sure how this peels off, but I'm just going to tear it apart because we're never going to put it back on there again. Okay, so we get a close-up of this unit, which is very similar to what we've seen from Beelink in the past, in that down here we've got that little plastic rubber tab, and that's so when you want to get inside of this thing, you take these 4 screws out, and I like that they haven't covered the screws with feet stickers. And then you say, okay, well this metal plate down here, it sits flush with the metal frame. So how do you take it out? Well, you'd have to get some kind of spudger in there. Well, that's what this is for. Once you remove the 4 screws, you then pull on this and this whole metal plate comes off, giving you full access to storage, Wi-Fi adapter, and your RAM. It's that easy. And that's pretty much all you would do. You would never do anything more than that. On the front of it, there's our 2 USB 3s. The USB 4 is also Thunderbolt and Type-C. This is a headphone microphone jack, like for a headset. Your power button, red. I like that they made it red. And over here, a recessed button to clear the CMOS, I guess for people that are playing with trying to overclock it. I don't advise that. If you're going to play with that, you're going to be pushing that button a lot until you figure out the stable settings. We got vents, I guess probably on both sides, yes. And on the opposite side, which is this way, where's our 2.5 gig LAN port, another USB 3 and a USB 2, 2 HDMI outputs, and of course our barrel connector for power. More vents up here. This thing has a lot of vents on it. And I think the top is a mesh top so that it can breathe. So it looks like they're doing this to deal with potential heat issues in such a small yet powerful compact case. Let me see what else is in the box here. We have, oh, well, if you recall with the GTR6, we had an alternate mesh cover that we could put on. And this is exactly that. If you want to, you just pop this cover up, and then this one could sit down right there like that. If you prefer a black and red look, a little more bold, it's included. You don't have to use it. No real tools are required. You just need to get something underneath the little areas on the edge, and it just pops off. You'll see there's just a little plastic clips there that pop in place. You don't have to take it off in any specific way. You just have to figure out a way to lift up one side, and the rest of it should come off easily. So it's a nice little thing. Now underneath this plastic bit here, it says accessories. All right, so what do we get for accessories? We've got that metal mounting plate that we're not going to use. We get an HDMI cable that's really short. This is if you wanted to mount the computer behind your monitor. You don't want a 5 or 6 foot HDMI cable just hanging around. That helps keep the cable hidden, but since there's 2 HDMI ports, you potentially need 2 of these. So I would imagine there's another one in here. What's this? Yep. So you'll see this one is really super short. Obviously, if this is mounted behind one monitor and there are 2 monitors, then one cable needs to run a shorter distance to one monitor than it does to the other. We've got a power cable. This is the Mickey Mouse style. See? Kind of looks like the silhouette of Mickey Mouse. And a laptop style power adapter. So there's no internal power supply on these. Like a laptop, the power supply is external, keeps the heat down. And finally, we've got some mounting screws, and these are likely both for the mounting plate and for mounting drives inside of the unit. I think you can put a 2.5-inch drive in there. I don't know why you would, but I think it's possible. And we can open it up and check that out later. But for the meantime, I'm going to just throw the rest of this stuff back in here so we can fire this bad boy up and run it through its paces and see what it's like. If I can just figure out how everything goes back in the box. Something like that, I think. It's very strange. I think it was something like that. Whoops. Don't mind me. Just making a mess. Okay. Set this aside. So to plug this in, obviously I'm going to give it power. I got to give it a keyboard and a mouse. I am not going to plug it into the network at first because it'll probably want me to create a Microsoft account, which I do not want to do. Once we get past the setup process, basically finalizing the install of Windows 11 Pro, then I can plug an Ethernet cable into it and then check for any updates. So that'll be the order of events, starting with power. So let me step around to the other side of the counter and let me find a plug over here that we can borrow. And I'm going to need this cable to be much longer. It's all wrapped up. There we go. They don't give you a whole lot of cable here, so you may need an extension if you're going to put this too far from the power source. Something to keep in mind. Okay. And I need a monitor, so we'll plug in the capture card back here. Now this doesn't matter which HDMI port you use. Either one works. It will auto sense whatever one you're using. And then we need a keyboard and a mouse, and we'll just plug that into the USB 2 port. I don't want to waste a high-speed port on a keyboard or a mouse. And that one dongle is wireless to both the keyboard and the mouse that I use. And then I'm going to step around back to my place. I'm going to turn these on, and then we're going to turn this unit on. We'll hit the red button. Is there a power light? Yes, so there's a light that lit up. And now I'm going to flip over to the HDMI input, which is currently showing me nothing. And let's give that a second to initialize. And while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and turn camera 1 back on so I can put myself in a corner so you guys can see. Oh, good timing. Just as I was doing that, it started to boot. So whenever you turn a computer, you're good. Whenever you turn a computer on for the very first time, even if you're building it yourself or you just bought one from the store, you need to make sure that you give it a good 90 seconds to turn on before you get impatient and think something is wrong. That can cause something to go wrong when the system is in the middle of initializing and then you interrupt it. So best to be patient on that very first power up. Let's see. SV says it does not have a DisplayPort connector. Yes, well, again, it is a mini PC, and as such, the manufacturer has to make decisions over what is going to be most likely in use by the public. As a professional computer technician, I very rarely run into any customers using DisplayPort or know what DisplayPort is. And furthermore, given the number of people that now plug their computers directly into their television, especially gaming PCs, things like Xboxes and PlayStations are generally only HDMI out because most consumer televisions, in fact, I've never seen a consumer television with a DisplayPort output that's strictly for computer monitors. So if you really want that high end, you'd be best to buy a discrete graphics card that you could plug into a motherboard in a bigger system and have that kind of control. Now, there are some mini computers that do have DisplayPort outputs. However, they won't game as good as this one will. So you have to decide which is more important to you. That being said, there are always HDMI to DisplayPort adapters that you could use to make it compatible if you have a monitor that's DisplayPort only. But again, I think the thought here is that most people are going to want to plug this into a television, or most people want to use multiple monitors, maybe up to 3 monitors, in which case, what's the most common connector on monitors that's sold today overall? There's more HDMI-based monitors out there than any other connector at this point. So I think they're just, strategizing based on based on the current market status. That's my guess. I'd really have to interview them to ask them. But personally, I'm glad it does not have DisplayPort. I despise DisplayPort. I hate it. You'll see anytime I get a DisplayPort output on a computer and I have to use it, I always adapt it to HDMI, always. Primarily because I don't have a capture card that can accept a DisplayPort input, and I don't want to switch all my cabling out. It's a real pain in the butt, and the video quality doesn't change in my use case scenario. So to each his own, right? I say good riddance to it, and you say, oh, what a shame it doesn't have it. That's why they build so many different styles of computers. This is why one style of computer will not take over another style. As long as what you want is different from what I want, there's justification for the variations that exist, and one will never take over the other unless we all agree on what we want, which is not likely going to happen based on the political status of the world today. Seems like we don't agree on much. So let me just take a quick go through here of the Windows 11 setup process. It's been installed for us, but we have to complete the install here. So this is pretty much the case with all brand new pre-built computers. Of course, English is what we want, so I'll click yes. And of course, we have a United States layout keyboard, and I do not want an alternate, here it is, US style keyboard layout. Yes, and no other keyboard layout is required for my needs. Okay, you got to accept a license agreement whether you like it or not. Now, who's going to use this device? I'm just going to say user and press enter. And I'll leave the password blank. And I like to leave location on, but I turn everything else off. And the end user, when I sell a computer, they can easily adjust any of this in the control panel if they don't like my defaults. But my defaults come from the overwhelming request from my customers that that's what most of them want. Overwhelmingly. It's very rare I run into anybody who wants it differently than that. But they have the power to change that. And those people that know that much, they don't need instruction from me on how to change it. They already know how. So I don't worry about what some of you might interpret as my configuration preferences. They're actually based on what my customers who are actually buying computers from me are asking of me almost universally. So it's safe to assume at this point that unless otherwise stated, that's what the customer is going to want. And those, as I mentioned, who don't want it that way often are technically savvy enough. If they know that, they know how to change it without calling me. So it doesn't result in a support call, and that's my biggest concern. Those support calls kill me financially. They are very, very costly, and I do everything I can to get everything done right and to make sure I'm very clear and very thorough with the customer's expectations. So if a support call comes, that means I've missed something somewhere, or perhaps something happened in shipping, which there's only so much I can do for packing. Now at this point, it says please keep your PC on and plugged in, and it's just going through the rest of the setup process, which will just take a minute. Once we're through this and we're up to the desktop, then I will plug the Ethernet cable in, and we can go to Windows Update, grab any updates, and then we can start to take a look at the specifications and then run whatever tests we want to run on it, like Crystal Disk Info, Crystal Disk Mark. We can run CPU-Z to take a look at the specs. I don't personally have time to play games, so it's not like I'm going to load Steam on here and load some games up. But there are plenty of other reviews on YouTube. If you're a gamer and that's what you're interested in, I encourage you to look up other reviews of this unit from folks that have run various games on it. The likelihood that they're going to run the game you play is very unlikely. However, it should give you an idea of what to expect from it and whether or not you see that as a value. Now, speaking of the desktop, it is up, so I can step around now and we'll plug the internet in, just like so. And I'll turn this around this way so you guys can kind of see it. And as I come back over here, I'm waiting for this little globe down here to become a little monitor that'll tell me it's online, that it's received an IP address from the router. And that might be a 2.5 gig port on the router too, now that I think about it. We may actually have a 2.5 gig connection here. Let's see. I could do this the old-fashioned way. Go to Control Panel. It's going to let me go there. Yeah. Let me switch my view to large icons. And I'm going to go to Network and Sharing Center. I'm going to go to Change Adapter. Well, wait, right here. Click on this. What connection do we have? 2.5 gig connection, it says. Let me just verify that. Let's go to Change Adapter Settings. Right-click on the Ethernet adapter and go to Status. Yeah, it just says 2.5 gig. I thought it was going to tell me my up and down speed, but I don't have any use for a 2.5 gig connection. My internet's not that fast. My NAS is not that fast. So transferring files wirelessly anyway isn't going to even do gigabit speeds. It'll get close, but hardwired 2.5 doesn't really make any sense to me for what I would have to do and the cost of upgrades to get to that speed. You'd have to be doing a whole bunch of input-output of large files across your local area network for that to make any sense. Or you'd have to have what we call multi-gig internet access. Most people have gigabit internet access. If they have gigabit at all, that's typically the peak or the pinnacle of what's offered. But some people in some areas are offered what's called multi-gig. Now, we all will eventually be offered that, give it enough time for the infrastructure to get upgraded. Some of us are luckier than others in that arena. So just know that that's coming, and it's all backwards compatible. So if it's not something you need today, it still works at 1 gig. It still works at 100 megabits per second. If you're still, 20 years behind, it is fully backwards compatible. Okay, now I just want to jump in the chat room and see what questions that you guys have. Well, let's go do the Windows updates first. Hold on, I'm getting out of order here. Let me go do the Windows updates, and while those are downloading, then I'll look in the chat room and see what's going on and see what questions you guys have for me. I'm going to go over here to settings and then over here to Windows Update. And while I've been talking, it's probably already been downloading. Yes, it has. I like to ensure that it is, I don't want to procrastinate this or put my faith that it's happening. So I always want to make sure a computer's up to date as soon as I receive it, because I don't know how long it's been sitting on a shelf. It could be missing a lot of updates. Those updates are critically important to performance, security, and reliability. And they're free. There's no reason to not put them on. Okay, now let me go and make camera 1 a little bit bigger. And we'll take a look here in the chat and see what I've been missing. Martin says, happy Friday the 13th. Back at you, Martin. Planet Cryos with a $2 contribution. He says, just a simple hello. Well, thanks, Planet Cryos, and a simple hello back to you. Planet Cryos has been a member now for 8 months. Right on. Awesome. Appreciate that. The memberships have only been available for 8 months, so he's been there right since day one. That's awesome. I appreciate that very, very much. Construction in the chat says, I'm too old for gaming, just GTA 6 when it arrives. Alan's gaming. All right, let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Mark Leibowitz says, I've always found DVI way more annoying with its 4 non-interchangeable, not always compatible plug variants. Yeah, you don't see DVI much anymore, but anytime I have to use DVI, I always use a DVI to HDMI adapter. Once again, the video capture cards are HDMI only. I've never seen a DVI input on a capture card, and I don't want to recable everything. So adapters are wonderful. VGA to HDMI is a little more tricky because VGA is an analog signal. DVI, DisplayPort, and HDMI are digital signals, and that means in most cases you simply can't plug an adapter on to VGA to convert it to HDMI. You have to also get some kind of power. Often it's a USB cable that plugs in, and all that USB cable is doing is providing power to the adapter to do the analog to digital conversion, because that can be a little more power hungry than just a regular adapter from digital to digital. We're going from an old analog connector. We're going all the way back to the 80s. Then you're trying to convert it into a modern day HDMI adapter. And that gets a little cabley, a little confusing. Also, DVI cables can carry audio, as do HDMI and DVI, where VGA does not. So sometimes the little VGA to HDMI adapters also have a 3.5 millimeter plug that you could plug into the sound card of your computer, plug it into the adapter, so the audio can be also digitally converted to go through the HDMI cable as it's supposed to. And as you can imagine, that is a cable nightmare, and it can get a little confusing. So I'm happy to see VGA gone. I'm happy to not see much in the way of DVI. And as for DisplayPort, I don't see it very often. I think in my entire career, I've had 4 customers who had it, 4. So that's no concern of mine. It doesn't crop up often enough for that to be an issue. And I've had a number of people who had DisplayPort like on a Dell computer, and they didn't know what it was, and they couldn't figure out how to get the video into their old monitor. And the old monitor will almost always have HDMI. And so I've had to point them to a $9 adapter that Amazon sells. Solves the problem super easy. But again, to each their own. People have reasons for wanting those things, and it's just not very common. It has not been widely adopted outside of corporate America, at least in my experience, from the people that call me for service. So, keeping in mind, I see a lot of computers. My anecdotal evidence is based on a more than average data, that much more than the average person would see. But perhaps not as much as, Geek Squad or somebody, big like that would see. They see far more computers than I do. Construction says, I am loving Windows 11 Pro now. It's been running nice, not as many bugs. Hopefully Windows 12 is better. Well, we don't even know that there is a Windows 12, right? That's all rumor. But generally speaking, here's what I can tell you. If you look at the history of when Microsoft releases operating systems, it's pretty much been October for a long time. Windows 11 came out in October, Windows 10 came out in October. So if there's going to be a Windows 12, it would have to be in beta right now to be released in October. We know that. That's obvious. Since there is no beta for Windows 12 out now, that means this October, there won't be any Windows 12. So then it's like, well, okay, 2024. Well, if a beta goes in place sometime, typically it needs about a year in beta, if not pretty close to it. If we don't see that beta out by this time, 2024, then it likely won't be ready for shipping in October. And, you know, it's probably a matter of time before a Windows 12 does come out, but it could be 8 years from now. It could be 5 years. It's really difficult to say. I would not make any plans for Windows 12 because it exists only in your imagination and in the rumors you read online. And if that's the kind of person you are, I'm glad I'm not your investor, because that seems a very foolish way to make investments into things that you don't really have much information on, but mostly imagination. But to each his own. But for the rest of you out there concerned about Windows 12, there is no Windows 12. Microsoft clearly denies there's no Windows 12. And Microsoft should be denying that because they don't want to deflate the value of Windows 11. So they used to do this thing called vaporware, where Microsoft would announce a product was coming out. Amazon did this too. If somebody was beating them to the punch on a new technology, they'd make an announcement that they have a technology similar but better that was coming out a few months later to discourage people from buying the competitor's product. And this put competitors out of business. Didn't give them a chance, and it wasn't a fair marketplace. And then those companies end up not even coming out with the product at all in some cases. So this vaporware idea, what it does is it diminishes the value of the current product. So if you know, for example, that if Microsoft says, hey, we've got Windows 12 coming out in October, then a lot of people are going to skip right over Windows 11. Now, if you're an investor in Microsoft and you see they're devaluing their own products before the new product is out to replace it, that may not be a company you want to invest in any longer, as they're not looking out for the interest of your the investment you made, which could be hundreds of millions of dollars. These investors, you know, when they're buying stock, we're talking about a lot of money here. And so $1 either way makes a huge difference to somebody who's investing that kind of money. So you don't want to devalue your own current product on the market with some product that's yet to come out and you don't have a date. So you would absolutely never admit that you're working on anything until it's ready to be shown and you feel like sales have flattened on your current, on the thing you're going to replace. That keeps your investors happy. That keeps your investments coming. And that's pretty much how the marketplace works. So yes, there is inevitably going to be a Windows 12, but it may not be till 2027. It's entirely possible. Or it may not be till 2026. They might just force you into Windows 11, right? Because Windows 10 support ends in October of 2025. And if it's October of 2026 that they release Windows 12, that would be a pretty interesting strategy that kind of forces you into that. And that may be what's likely, but who knows what they're thinking. It's going to be very hush-hush, like a poker game. They're playing their cards close to their chest, and they want you to buy what they have. They don't want you to postpone your purchase waiting for what they're going to come out with. That would be a massive marketing mistake that would cost the company millions. So that's why you will read these rumors that are based on hearsay, they're based on imagination, and some of it's based on, there's a number of people on the internet that find it funny how people are so gullible. I remember growing up in school that people would come up to you and say, hey, you know the word gullible's not in the dictionary? And then if you argued about it and actually looked it up to prove it, they laughed at you for being an idiot. They thought it was funny. They knew the whole time they're messing with you. Well, people enjoy messing with other people. There's entertainment in that. I don't know why. It's a weird psychosis. But this is why we have deep fakes and things like ChatGPT and stuff like that, where people are using these things, not universally, but there's a certain percentage that use it just to mess with people. If you go to YouTube and you look for Windows 12, you'll see people have made up a Windows 12, like they're actually using Windows 12. Why do they spend the time and effort to make these videos that are clearly fraudulent? It's a joke. It's a practical joke. Why do people pull practical jokes? They're typically not funny to the victim. So if you want to be a victim of a practical joke, that's the path. So when official sources release information, that's a different story. If Microsoft, has an official statement in that regard, then that's absolutely true. At least it's true as of the time that they write that press release. Any other source, unless it's, it's got to be a really reputable source, a well-established news organization, not somebody's blog, and certainly not YouTube. You're not going to get any new news off YouTube or a blog. If it's that big of a deal, it will be a national news, and it will be carried by major media publications. That's pretty much the way you know fact from fiction. And even sometimes the media publications get caught up in a prank and publish things that aren't true because the pranksters think that's hilarious. That's even more hilarious. But we do rely on our professional journalists to do their due diligence because most of us can't be bothered. We'll hit share, we'll hit retweet, and absolutely not verify any of the facts and just keep propagating that prank. Even if you're not in on it, you could be unknowingly propagating a prank. In any event, hopefully that answers any questions or concerns about Windows 12. Let's see. Sherry McFarland wants to know, reviews on the link below this live stream say there are problems with a second solid-state drive being recognized in the BIOS. Oh, that's interesting. That may be something we'll look at in a future video. But we also don't know if these folks know what they're doing when they're adding a second drive. So that's another problem. We run into people writing reviews who are angry because the product arrived damaged, maybe because their UPS driver drop kicked it to their front door. We don't know how it was handled in shipping. So to blame the manufacturer on that, I think, is kind of has a lack of understanding. The second thing is there are people that'll put a brand new drive in and they don't know they need to partition it and format it before they can use it. Or there may be people who weren't putting the connectors on all the way, they aren't seating it properly, or they might be using old or used hardware they purchased off a questionable site. Maybe they bought it from some seller on eBay. So we don't know what is the quality of component they're putting in. Are they installing it correctly? Do they know it has to be initialized and formatted before they can use it? So I enter all that sort of stuff with a skepticism because I know what people hire me to do. And a lot of things I do, they could have easily done themselves, but they were stuck and they didn't know. Somebody who says, my Wi-Fi doesn't work anymore on my laptop. And I say, well, you've got a button on your laptop that you've pressed that turns your Wi-Fi off. And they say, no, I don't have a button on my laptop that does that. And I say, if you look at the documentation that came with the laptop, and they say, well, where would I find that button? I go, well, it varies from one laptop to the other. It may be a key press, it may be a switch on the side or the front or the back. It may be a combination of keys, like a function button with one of your function keys. There's no way for me to know that. You'd have to, I'd have to know the make and model. I'd have to look up the PDF and read the manual for you, or you can just do that on your own. In one case, this person said, all right, if you say so, I'll look it up, and if I still need help, I'll call you back. See, I'm a terrible businessman. I should have just said, yeah, I'll be there, and you can pay me to push a button for you. But I'm not that guy. So anyway, they called me back about 20 minutes later, and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. This laptop has no Wi-Fi button that you described. I've looked at the manual. And if you think that you're going to come over here and just push a button and I'm going to pay you for that, and you're right, I'll gladly pay you. That's how certain I am. There is no such button. So I got in the car, I drove over there, I showed her where the button was, and she got her checkbook out and felt like a fool. And I told her there's no reason to feel foolish. I was just trying to avoid the long drive in the car. It's an hour in the car to go back and forth. And, you know, what else can I show you while I'm here? You got an hour of my time that you're paying for. So, you know, let me make sure you understand how this button works. Let me have you practice it while I'm here. Push this and push that. You see it was a combination of keys. You'll see the Wi-Fi goes on, the Wi-Fi goes off. It's always been that way since you bought the laptop. You probably inadvertently pressed it, didn't realize it. It's not a big deal. But now I want you to just familiarize yourself with it so you won't find yourself in this position in the future. And then I noticed her Malwarebytes was out of date. I said, would you like me to help you renew that? She said, yeah, I don't know how to do that. And all you got to do is follow the prompts. So I did that for her. I said, how do you want to pay? Give me a credit card. You want to pay? And she gave me a credit card. I put it in for her, gave her the card back. There's your receipt. You're good for another year. We were done. All of that she could have done on her own. So when I read these reviews of people that say there's a problem, there's so many variables there, and I'm so skeptical, knowing what I see people do, that until I test it myself, it may be valid. There actually may be a problem. But I'm leaning towards, not likely. But if there is, I'm sure Beelink will have a BIOS update that addresses it. And in fact, after the broadcast, I will reach out to Beelink and see if they know anything about this, just to confirm it with the manufacturer. So I'm glad you brought it to my attention. I've not heard of that before. Peter in the chat says some people messed with Windows 9 pretending they had it and used it. This is true. If you go to YouTube and look for Windows 9, there are videos showing Windows 9, but all it is Windows 7 or Windows 8, and they've just doctored it up a little bit because, you know, it's a practical joke. And there's no telling it's a practical joke. I see this a lot. I saw a video that said, here's how to make your internet 10,000 times faster. And they have them going in GP edit, which you can't do in a home version of Windows. They have them adjusting a QoS setting, which absolutely has no impact if you're not using QoS on your router. And there are people that are writing in the comments, thanks, this helps so much, because they realize it's all a prank, and they want to convince people watching it that it's real. They're in on the joke. That's why they're writing, thank you so much, this changed everything, or my internet is now 10,000 times faster. They think it's hilarious, and they're leaving those comments to support the actual prank. And very rarely will you see a comment that it says it's a prank, because often those comments are removed because it takes away the prank, right? Once somebody's reading through the comments, before they go through those steps, a lot of people will look at the comments to say, is this real? And the comments are verifying that it's real. But it isn't. It's still not real. It's still a prank. So if you want the information, you need to go to a different source and verify it. Don't ask the liar if the liar is telling the truth, and don't ask the liar's friends if the liar is telling the truth. You've got to go to an unbiased third party and then see if that's the truth. You have to understand your source. So if your source is motivated to lie to you, then any friends of the source are also motivated to lie to you because they're in on it. So you need to do like an independent Google search to see if there are other articles from legitimate, known publications, like PC World Magazine. Did they do an article on it? Or some large media company, preferably tech media, like Tom's Hardware, AnandTech, any of the well-established, reputable media sources. And if you can't find anything on it, they usually have forums where you can ask and post a link to the video and say, is this real? And there are very kind individuals that will be more than happy to confirm whether or not what you're seeing is real, that are not in on the prank because they're not there. They're somewhere else. They're not related to it. So they don't have the motivation in most cases to continue to mislead you because they think it's funny. That's how the internet works. You know, it's all about, let's see what we can break. Let's see. There's a certain portion of users out there that find entertainment in manipulation and deception. And if they can actually succeed at it, there is a form of strange, twisted sense of accomplishment that makes them feel smarter than the person they fooled. What it's doing is it's eroding trust. it has a very significant and long-lasting impact on users who just won't believe anything anymore. Once they've been embarrassed too many times, they just won't, you start telling them something true and they just won't listen to you now. They've eroded every bit of trust they had left. It's gone. And that's all the consequences of a prank, or multiple pranks to the one person who's tired of being made to look like a fool, right? It's just common sense. You're going to stop that behavior, so you're just not going to believe anything anymore. But I'm encouraging you to actually do the research on your own. You've got Google. It just takes a minute, and you can confirm if what you're reading is true or not. Just like this whole Windows 12. Everything I've told you, you can confirm everything I told you about Windows 12 from reputable news organizations. Okay, let's see. How are we doing over here? I haven't been paying attention. Go back over here, full screen. Oh, we're ready for a restart. Okay, we're going to do that restart now. And again, while we're waiting, I'm just going to look and see if there's other questions or concerns in the chat. I'm always happy to help folks. If you have any technical struggles you're dealing with getting something to work, we're always happy to take those questions during live feeds. Oh, there's Rick Lakes telling me the restart was waiting. Sorry, Rick, I just saw your comment now. I was scrolled further up to look at past comments and missed all the current ones. But I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Do I have any experience with Linux on this machine? I am not a Linux user. I do not promote or condone the use of Linux because there's no way for me to run a business on Linux. I am a professional computer technician and I work on a platform that is most common. If most of the world was using Linux and so the variety of work existed where I didn't have to beat on doors to find a user that I could help, then I would be servicing Linux or Mac for that reason, But I'm going to where the majority of the work exists. There are plenty of Linux-based YouTube channels out there, and that would probably be a better source for any Linux information. I am not a good source for that. I stay away from it. It's not my bread and butter, and I would be out of business if I supported Linux. It's a valid question whether or not it supports Linux. I don't know, would be probably the best answer I could give you. Linux isn't really a gaming platform, so given that this is being sold as a gaming PC, I don't know if there would be any restrictions on Linux, but it's definitely not ideal for gaming. Sure, you can play some games on Linux, but there's a lot you can't play. Garfield Rupe with a $2 contribution says $10. Okay, I don't know what that means, but thank you for the super chat. Selden Bell wants to know if I can check the gaming performance, maybe run FutureMark on it. Yeah, I think we can do that if we have time. I know I ran out of time on the GTR6. We went way long on that video. But if we get to this stuff earlier today, we should be able to have time for that because those tests do take a little bit of time. Now, when we talk about benchmarks, unfortunately, we live in a world now where people are being told if they're happy or not by their technology, not their technician. Do you like your computer? I don't know. Let me see what the benchmarks say first. So if the benchmarks don't come back the way you want them to, then you're not happy. Well, yeah, duh. Okay, but that's not the way computers are supposed to work. The way a computer is supposed to work is that you actually use the computer and you see how you feel. This is something a computer will never do for you. It will never feel for you. Computer games and anything with a computer are numb. You can eat a virtual sandwich, but I think you're still going to be hungry. You can drink virtual water. I think you're still going to be thirsty. You will not feel pain. You will not feel true pleasure. You will not feel texture. You will not taste or smell anything from the computer that is supposed to simulate reality. We're not there. We probably never will be there. So when we talk about benchmarks, in my opinion, and we'll get to the benchmarks, I think the benchmarks are being abused and misunderstood. How many frames per second, who cares? in my opinion, all that stuff is doing is upsetting you, and it's distracting you from what's important. You load the game you want to play, right? So no matter what benchmark I put on this, it's not going to emulate the game you want to play, and it may not emulate the resolution you play it under. Let's just put that out there. When you put your game on here, you will adjust the settings likely to the highest you can go where the game still plays well for you, where it feels right. If you put the settings up too high and the game starts lagging or the graphics are tearing, then it doesn't feel good. You don't like how that feels. You're like, this gaming experience is off. And so you will make those adjustments so that the gaming experience is pleasurable and it feels right. Now, what feels right to you and what feels right to me may be two entirely different things. Let me give you an example. I grew up playing video games in the arcade, and people say, well, you can get MAME now and you can put those same arcade games on your PC. Why don't you do that, Carrie? Because it's not the same. And you say, well, it's the arcade ROM. Carrie, it's the same game. I go, yeah, but I don't have the controller. Well, you can buy the controller. Yes, but the controller is different for each game, and the spacing and the buttons for Donkey Kong are different than the spacing and the buttons for Defender. And if you played it in the arcade, you're accustomed to where those buttons are and how they feel to that specific game. So Moon Patrol's controller is different from a Gyrus controller, and that's different from a Qbert controller, and that's different from a Tron or a Gorf controller, which is different from a Spy Hunter controller. These are all different controllers. And without having the authentic controller, I cannot emulate the authentic experience of playing the game. Oh, it's real easy, Carrie. Instead of the left and right joystick, you just use the keyboard. No. That's not how the game was played. So it's not the same. It doesn't feel right. You can show me the frames per second. You can show me the audio quality. You can show me side by side to the arcade game just how precisely it's being emulated. But you don't have the right controller. It's not the same game with a different controller. So when I show you the benchmarks, I want you to understand it's a generalization of a very specific process under pretty much very specific settings. And it is not an indicator of how the machine is going to perform for you. The great thing when you buy from Amazon is you have the opportunity to send something back. Costco also has a very generous return policy so that you can test drive this and decide for yourself. If it doesn't meet your expectations, you send it back. You have 30 days in most cases with Amazon purchases here in the United States to send it back. I don't like it. It's a good reason. They'll take it back. Just make sure you put it back with all the accessories so they can resell it to somebody else, right? If they sent you one that didn't have one of the accessories, you'd probably be pretty angry. So you got to make sure you keep everything together. So you send it back and you can use the credit to go buy something else. Because if you're going to tell me to taste food for you, to tell you if you're going to like it, don't be surprised if I tell you stuff is delicious that you spit out and makes you sick, because we have different taste. So I want to encourage you, if you have an interest in the unit and it's that strong, purchase it, because that's the only way you're ever going to know. You will never know from benchmarks. You will never know from emulation. You will never know from simulation. Never, never. I can emulate how to ride a bicycle all day. All day, every day, I can show you the videos. I could put you in a virtual reality environment, and you will never, ever understand balance until you get on the bicycle. There's no way to convey that through virtual reality. So until you're ready to sit on the bicycle and practically fall over, maybe you will fall over. It's part of the learning process. Put your knee pads on, put your helmet on, stay close to a curb where you can kind of keep yourself propped up, and you can learn to ride on two wheels or a unicycle. But you have to actually do it for real. Otherwise, anything you try to emulate is not even anywhere close to the real experience. Not even close. So if you don't believe me, try it sometime. All right, let's take a look here. Let me make sure I've got all the updates put in. So one more round of checking for updates. I anticipate it's going to tell us we're all current. But I just like to repeat the process on any new computer, and I advise you to do the same until it says we're up to date. So we'll check one more time, and hopefully it comes back and says we're all current. So there's a little anti-malware app update. That's nothing. And that only takes a second to update our antivirus, which is Windows Defender, which is free with Windows. And you'll get those frequently. They are made aware of viruses. They have to write the antidotes, and that's what that is. So that's all good to go. If I check it again, now it should tell us that there are no more updates. Yep, that's exactly what it says. And let me grab my flash drive with utilities on it, and we're going to plug that in here. If I can find the port. Okay, let me bring over a couple of utilities and we can benchmark this bad boy. Helps if I grab the right mouse though. Okay, so we're going to go over here and we're going to bring over, well, I'm going to do a couple things. Is it this drive? Yes, PC testing software. So we're going to bring over CPU-Z. That can kind of give us an overview of the board, BIOS version, details of the RAM. Crystal Disk Info can tell us about the installed NVMe drive. Crystal Disk Mark Portable, we'll see our benchmark numbers. I can use HW Info for measuring our temps, our temperatures. And then the Prime 95 26.6 to just beat the heck out of this thing and torture it to see what would happen if we run, you know, full foot to the floor, 100% CPU usage and a lot of total RAM usage to cause this thing to work in an unrealistic way that no user would ever likely push the computer that hard for that length of time. And if it doesn't overheat in that period of time, then we know that there's nothing the user's going to likely be able to do to make it overheat. So that's why I run that quote unquote benchmark. It's just a way of establishing that it will survive the worst. A worst case scenario that is not likely to ever become reality. And that gives me peace of mind when I sell a machine to a customer that it's not going to come back with heat issues because the customer's being rough with it. Now, this verifies the CPU that's installed. This will tell us about the main board that's installed, our BIOS version and date, which isn't that old, but it is a new machine, meaning it just came out, introduced to the market. The memory is DDR5. We're confirming that. We can see the SPD info somewhat here, and of course the serial presence device information is not loading on this. That's pretty interesting. Normally we can see slot 1 and slot 2, but that may be with the DDR5 memory controller. That CPU-Z needs to be updated for that. This gives us information about the built-in graphics that are part of the chip, which is the AMD Radeon. They're not giving it any other name here. And then this benchmark I don't care about, and the About page I don't care about. Now we go over to, let's go over to, which one is this? Crystal Disk Info. Let's just take a quick look at what it says the storage drive is in here. We should see a make and model. It's a Kingston and it's 500 gigs. Okay. And this should be Gen 4. It does show PCIe 4 up here in the transfer mode. It is in Gen 4 mode. That's good. We can see it's only been powered on 10 times and less than 2 hours of use on it. It's like a little odometer that all drives have. You may not be aware of that. You need a special piece of software to pull that information up. Now, let's go to Crystal Disk Mark and let's see what kind of performance numbers we're going to pull from there. Oh, this is Prime 95. Crystal Disk Mark should be over here. We want the 64-bit edition, and we're going to run all these tests. And I'm going to close these windows out so that we don't have too much visual noise on the screen. And I'm sort of blocking part of this, aren't I? With my video. Let me make my video a little bit smaller. And I think I'm going to put it over here. Try and keep it out of the way. Hey, there's our good friend Marvin Jameson joining us in the chat. Welcome in, Marvin. Good to see you, my friend. Stan Ristov says his Microsoft Outlook only does 25 frames per second. Oh, yes. Garfield says, sorry, I can't contribute more and more often, but I'm on a fixed income. Hey, you know, I just appreciate that you're here and you join us in the chat. And you're friendly and supportive. You're kind. That's the best contribution you can make. So, you know, keep being kind, and I'm very, very proud to have you as a member of this amazing community that we've created here together. So these benchmarks aren't blowing me away. I'm not a fan of Kingston when it comes to reliability or performance in the solid state space. Not to say they don't have performance options. This is clearly a budget Gen 4 drive, which helps to explain how they can be selling this mini PC that can do AAA titles in gaming at such a low price. I mean, you find me an equivalent desktop computer, which you're going to need, you know, well, I guess in the same way you're going to need a monitor, a keyboard, and mouse, just the same. But you'll need a larger area to, you know, desktop space will be more desktop space required. It'll probably be noisier than this, and it'll probably be more upgradable than this is too, but physically larger, and likely would cost more money. So pros and cons, each way you look at it, just depends on what your expectations are. When we look at these numbers, typically about 3600 is the maximum of Gen 3. So anytime you see anything over 3600, you're probably in Gen 4. On the upper left there, the sequential read speed. The write speed is a lot lower than I'd personally like to see. In most cases, under normal use, you'd never know the difference between a Gen 3 and a Gen 4 NVMe drive anyway. You're talking about a difference in milliseconds and load times, and most human beings cannot measure milliseconds without some kind of measuring tool. So don't let the benchmarks get you upset or frustrated, because the reality is you likely, as a normal human being, you could not tell the difference. Your Windows load times are going to be the same. They're so close with most applications that you load. Your browser, you know, your internet's still going to be whatever speed your internet is regardless. You're still whatever speed you are, no matter how fast your computer is. In most cases, your computer is waiting 80% of its time on you. 80% of a computer's time is just spent idling patiently for you to catch up to it. So this idea that you need a drive that'll do 10,000, you know, you need a Gen 5 NVMe SSD, you might, but you'd be one of the very few people on the planet that could justify that. It'd be very unusual. Most people just want it because they want to brag. You're just bragging you have more money, but you'd have even more money if you didn't waste it on that nonsense. On the other hand, there are people who do a lot of data input-output on a regular, ongoing basis that do see benefit from it, but they're few and far between in the world of computers that we live in. Those actual real power users represent probably 7% of the number of computers out there, or the number of computer users out there. It's a very, very low number, especially in the consumer space. In a business space, depends on the business. But in any event, there's our final numbers for Crystal Disk Mark. And again, nothing mind-blowing here. And these numbers are very, very similar to a Gen 3 drive. So the fact that it's Gen 4 seems more of a marketing ploy than what you're really getting. But you can upgrade that, and you can put a faster solid-state drive in it if that was important to you to get those milliseconds, which, you know, I'm not judging. It's your money. And it's your milliseconds. All right. Now, when it comes to benchmarking gaming performance, let me go back over to this, wrong screen, Carrie. Let me go back over to my desktop full screen. And before I run the gaming benchmark, the future mark on it, I want to run Prime 95, and I want to see if this thing has any potential heat-related problems from running it at full spec for 15 to 20 minutes. Let's see if it can do it. I just want sensors on this. Click Start. And we'll close that out. I don't want a beta. Oh, is that not beta anymore? Maybe I can update it later. Let's see, what do we have for temperatures here? Here we go. So I'm already seeing, we haven't done anything yet. So this is a little disconcerting. When you see the numbers in red here, it's telling you the CPU is likely throttling, or that the temperatures are in a concerning state of heat. Now, what I don't know is whether or not the update that we just got offered to this software changes the interpretation of these sensors, which is possible. I am hearing the fans running quite a bit on the little mini PC right now as I run it, which suggests to me it's running hot enough to cause the fan to ramp up, yet I've not really done anything major with this. So this is a bit worrying. I want to grab a second opinion here. So I'm going to go back to my utilities flash drive where I keep my software, and we're going to put on HW monitor, which I normally use on Intel builds, but they've updated this that it's more accurate with AMD now than it used to be. So let's bring that up and see if these two agree. I'm getting very different numbers here. Oh, maybe not. Let me see. I see voltage, watts, core speed here. Assembly. This is the entire assembly. This isn't telling me. This is telling me the temperature of the NVMe drive, which of course isn't bad at all, nor would I expect it to be. GPU. Huh. Well, this is why I use the other software for AMD systems. This one, well, it's gotten better for recognizing the temperature sensors on AMD boards. Clearly, they've got more work to do here because I'm not seeing it. But I am concerned on this one if those numbers are accurate or not, because this won't survive Prime 95 without, let me rephrase, I don't want to say survive. It's not going to damage anything. It's just the test isn't going to last very long before we reach a throttle point if these numbers are real. It just seems wrong that the system would be running that hot while it's idling. So let's see what happens. Let's bring up Prime 95. Again, this is 26.6. We leave all these default values. I hit OK, and we should start seeing this thing ramp up rather quickly with high temperatures. Once I bring that screen up back, here we go. And if I start my phone to get a timer going, we'll see how long it lasts before I have to shut it down. So we'll get that started, and we'll just keep an eye on it. it does raise some concern of those temps where we're not really doing anything with the computer. So now that we start really asking the computer to work, it doesn't seem like it's got much headroom to grow. But we'll maybe it's engineered in a way that it just never exceeds those temps regardless. I don't know, but this is how we're going to find out. And I want to know this before I start running any gaming benchmarks on it. But I'm not convinced those numbers are real, because I would think this computer would be much louder if that were true. But there could be a fan curve in the BIOS that needs to be adjusted, or it's possible that the cooling is ineffective. But Beelink has been doing this for some time now, building these machines, and their GTR6 was very, very impressive. So in the cooling regard. So I expect us to follow the same technology. So we'll keep an eye on it. In the meantime, I'm going to make my screen smaller. So if you guys see anything in the chat, please let me know, because it's too small for me to see when I put it into a window so I can see the chat room. So what we're looking for is we want to make sure that the machine isn't going to shut down. If a machine overheats, it's not going to fry your machine. I mean, unless you're getting into the BIOS and overclocking it and putting more voltages in it, then you can literally fry it. But in the case of running it stock, it's going to automatically throttle itself anytime it gets too hot. And if the throttling isn't cooling it enough, then it will shut down to protect itself. So we won't cause any damage, just so you rest assured. But what would happen if you were playing a game and it started to overheat is your game would start to stutter and possibly blue screen, or worst case, computer would shut off on you. And that is something that a benchmark can't really replicate what that feels like when that happens, when you're in the middle of a game, especially if you're really into it and all your momentum is broken in a moment. Construction said, I sent a PayPal. I don't need the message out or my name. Cheers. Well, thank you for supporting the channel, Construction. I appreciate you, my friend. Yes, there is AMD software we could load on here that should be more accurate. But so the problem is when we use different software to do benchmarking, then it's not a fair comparison. If you don't use the exact same benchmark software in the exact same version, then your benchmarks mean nothing to your viewers or your readers if you're a journalist. It's not fair to compare something with one piece of software and compare something else with another piece of software, and then compare those two things and establish which one's better based on the numbers, when the benchmarking software establishes the numbers in a very different way. Therefore, your benchmarks are a complete waste of everybody's time, because you have no basis of comparison from which to build any reference of what should be expected. If you want to download a piece of software over and over until you find one that gives you the numbers you want to see, I don't think you're really understanding the point. Because you can do that. We can find software, I can assure you, that will show me the numbers I want to see. But that's not the way I do benchmarks. Every machine gets the same benchmark. And if I upgrade the benchmarking software or change it, it completely disqualifies any previous benchmarks I did, and we start at zero again and start new comparisons moving forward. The problem with that process, obviously, is if you have an old piece of benchmarking software that isn't reading the sensors correctly or at all, as in the case of the other temperature software I just ran, it didn't see any of the sensors, at least none of the CPU sensors. It's useless. It becomes useless. But then what happens to all of the years of time and investment that that software was utilized to build a database to make comparisons. They're dismissed. They're disqualified now because we have to change the software and we have to start again with nothing to compare it to. This becomes the new sort of 0 point and we move forward from there. I like to avoid that and only do that when I have to. I hate to throw away all that work and investment I put into it. On 5.5 minutes on the benchmark here, and let me just make my screen a little larger so I can see where we're at on the temps. And I'm going to have to get up close to the screen here. Obviously, the maximum temperature, the one you see in red, that's never going to change unless we ever achieve anything higher than 88.6. Now, I'm not quite sure what the throttle point is on this processor, but in general, I like to keep my processors at 85 or below. And seeing 88.6, and below that, I see an 89.3 on the core. We're probably not at the throttle at that point, but we're getting close, and that makes me a little uneasy. I'd like that to be lower. However, I don't know that the CPU is throttled, and I don't know that this would cause any negative effects in gameplay. So far, we're okay, but it's on the edge. That's what I would say. We're right on the edge of not being okay. So we'll let it run and see if it falls over the edge. If it doesn't fall over the edge, well, we're on a tightrope and haven't fallen. I'm just a little uncomfortable with that. Once again, Prime 95 is not a realistic benchmark to put on a machine. It's very, very unrealistic that any consumer that has this machine would push the CPU and the RAM this hard, this period of time. Usually in normal everyday usage, including games, there are parts of the game that are more CPU or RAM intensive, and those parts cause the machine to work harder, and then a few seconds or moments later, as you move on through the game, other things that have been cached, etc., then just run very, very easily, and then it'll just keep going up and down and up and down. That's normal. And when you just slam it so it's only going up, it never has a chance to take a breath. It's like holding your breath for a longer period of time than any human being would ever reasonably need to do. At some point, you need to let it out and bring a new, inhale and bring more air in. So when under normal computing usages, when you're slamming on the CPU and the RAM, that's sort of like your computer's holding its breath, and then it finishes and then it drops back down and it goes, and that prevents the CPU from getting hotter and hotter and hotter, because when it's getting that little break, it's cooling down. And it can just continue to do this, and you have 100% smooth operation, and that is engineered to run and do exactly that. That's what it's engineered to do, and that's why it's designed to do that. Not to mention it saves electricity usage, because the CPU will slow down, which will use less power, create less heat, and it'll cool down faster, so it's ready for the next big inhale. So to do that for 15 to 20 minutes, it's very unrealistic, but it does tell me if it can do that and it doesn't need to exhale, like it's not overheating, then we should be fine, pretty much, with a very rare exception. Universally, that should be never a heat problem for anybody. But the minute you get in there, and if you overclock it or overvolt it, all bets are off the table. Rasa in the chat says 95 is the throttle junction point. So we're not in the 90s yet, so we're still far cry from it. Thank you for the information. Greg wants to know if Prime 95 is effective for 12th and 13th gen core CPUs. Does it exercise the efficiency cores as well as the performance cores? Well, the efficiency cores would never generate enough heat to throttle the CPU. That's why they're called efficiency cores. So in short, the answer is yes. It does it to a point that it becomes irrelevant. It becomes a moot point. The performance cores are the only ones that are going to create heat problems. Your efficiency cores would never create a heat problem, no matter what load you threw on them. They just don't have the voltage for it. So in that sense, it's a creative question, but if you understand the way E-cores work, you'd realize that it's a non-issue that couldn't happen and therefore doesn't really matter. So the short answer is yes, it does. Mark wants to know if the PC needs a BIOS update. I'm assuming there is no BIOS update. Beelink recently sent this computer to me to review, and I can't imagine they would send me one that needed a BIOS update prior to the review, because they obviously want a good review, right? So they wouldn't set it up to fail. They would tell me, for example, they'd say, hey, we're going to send you the computer. Please make sure it has this BIOS update in it before you review it. They did not do that. Furthermore, as you can see on Amazon, there's no reviews on this product, so it is a brand new product, and this may be the feedback they require for testing to verify if, in fact, a BIOS update is necessary. We're very early on this product's release, and like any other brand new product to market, there may be some polishing and refinement ahead of it. On the other hand, it may not be bad, and this may be operating exactly as they intend it to. I won't know until I talk to them. Barry Russ with a $5 contribution. Thank you, Barry. David Ice jumps in the chat, says hello. Welcome in, David. Where are we at on this? We're 11, almost 12 minutes in. Let me just take a look here. Someone's pointing out there's timers at the bottom of the window. I'm not interested in those timers. You have to understand. The only interest I have is on my own timer that I have control of. That if the computer were to blue screen on me and crash or shut down, I can't see the timer. I can't say where was it at if it was on the screen and the screen's not there anymore. So for logical reasons, I have an independent timer that I use. So if anything happens, if we exceed a certain temperature, if the screen were to freeze, go blue, or the computer were to shut down, I have a timer that's not impacted by that. And when I go to the manufacturer, I can tell them, I'm running this software, this version, and at this length of time, this happens. So that's why I do that, if you're curious. Now, let me just bring this full screen so I can take a look at where we're at. Because again, when I'm looking at the chat room, the screen is a window in a window in a window, and it's very, very tiny for me. When I make it full screen, I cannot see the chat room, but then I can read the desktop. So once again, and I still have to get pretty close here to see this, we're currently running right around 81 degrees Celsius, which isn't bad. Our minimum, that's the middle figure, has been in the 40s, which is expected. And the maximum, well, the only thing I'm seeing that's concerning is that CPU core at 89.3, and that happened earlier, before we started the test, I think. It was already up that high for some reason. So Prime 95 adjusts what it's doing. It's not just doing the same thing over and over. It's putting different calculations and pressures onto the CPU. Some are more RAM intensive than others. And as a result, it causes some computers to run harder and hotter depending on which function it's testing. And that's why I run it for 15 to 20 minutes, because it allows a greater variety of different tests to take place under the same hardware to see how the hardware reacts to that. So one machine might get hot under one test that Prime 95 runs, where another machine doesn't get hot nearly as much by the same test, but gets hotter, on some other test that this other machine didn't think was a big deal. It depends on which CPU you've got, how efficient it is, how much power it's drawing. There's a lot of variables, what cooler you're using. And so we want the vast variety of tests over an extended period of time so that we've pretty much thrown everything at it that's reasonable. There's no sense letting this run overnight. That's just ridiculous, because eventually you'll just start going around in circles. Once you go 15 minutes, for the most part, you're fine. You want to go an extra 5, go to 20 minutes. I've seen some machines heat up between 15 and 20 minutes. I don't see it too often, but if it's doing good and I don't have any concern, I'll let it run the additional 5 minutes, let it go a full 20, just to make the test as thorough as possible so we can conclude with some confidence that we're okay or we're not going to be okay. Okay? The Greek says a Noctua NHD15 would help. Yeah, that Noctua NHD15 would be about the size of 6 of these computers. I'm sure it would help. Yeah, set one by another one and then stack them so that they're 3 high, 2 wide, and you'd be about the size of that Noctua DH15. I'm not seeing much going on in the chat. I don't see any questions that I've missed. If you've asked a question and I haven't addressed it, it's likely because I haven't seen it, and you'd need to put the put your question back in the chat room again while I'm looking. That's the trick. And where are we at? We're about 16 minutes, a little over 16 minutes in the test. We're still doing okay, so I'll let it run the full 20. You know, we started off much higher than I expected, but that's certainly not impacted the results of this test, which is surprising. Starshine wants to know if I'm playing any games currently. I wish I had time. No, I simply do not have time. I've got customers waiting. I've got videos in a backlog. I'm trying to make a purchase for a studio, and it's just too much going on in life. And I'm trying to establish a good, strong foundation in 2023 on which to continue to put a solid foundation under YouTube in the sense of a permanent studio location. And that is consuming every spare minute I have. So there's really not much in the way of TV or movies or gaming that I have the luxury to sit back and enjoy. Maybe at some point when things slow down, I'll be able to revisit that. But honestly, I don't have much interest in it anymore when there's so much money to be made and people are basically throwing money at me in exchange for my time. So if I'm busy playing games, there's somebody holding cash saying, take my money, who I'm ignoring. Those people, if they wait too long, will ask somebody else to take their cash. Would I rather play a game or take some money and help somebody out? I'd rather help somebody and get paid. So I work 7 days a week. I've got an appointment with a client Sunday, and I will probably be there most of the day. It's a lot of work. I've got to do a lot of work. And I may not even get it done. But this client's been waiting for me for 3 months. And if I don't prioritize this, I'm going to lose the job. So I'm running 7 days a week right now. There is a certain enjoyment to just flipping on an arcade game and putting an old school Galaga, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. You fire it up real quick. There's no load times. There's no frames per second. There's no blue screens. There's no overheating. And you just get right to it. There's no learning curve, right? I've been playing those games for years. I'm never bored of them. I've never won any of them. And I always try to do better every time I play. And there's something to be said about that than the fickle nature of most games where people win the game and then they never want to play it again. I don't know. That just seems like a very expensive, consumable, gluttonous way to live life where you're just constantly ingesting and then never ever dealing with that again. And then, you know, playing something else and you get through that. And I mean, I put a lot of time into Gears of War, and I haven't played Gears of War in forever. I don't even know what version they're up to, if there's even been any updates to it, quite frankly. I enjoyed the Halo games immensely, but again, if there was a brand new Halo game out, I'd love to play it, but I just, not enough time. I got more important things to do. Mark Gaines with a 20-pound contribution says, wow, 8 months membership. I've been looking forward to this review, Carrie. Hey, well, thank you, Mark. Yeah, this was a surprise. I didn't even know this product was even made available or was coming out. I thought the GTR6, which I just reviewed, was the epitome of a mini gaming machine. But now this one's come out, and this one's even stronger in its specifications with that level of CPU and GPU and DDR5 RAM. It's spec'd out really, really nice. So on paper, it sounds great, and it's much, much smaller. It's about 1/3 smaller than the GTR6, maybe a little bit more than 1/3. So if that's important, to have the smallest space possible while still being able to game, I don't know anything that competes with this currently on the market. Not with these dimensions and not at this price. But we will throw feature mark on it for sure, because now I've got confidence. Now I'm like, okay, we're over 20 minutes. We're almost 21 minutes into this, and it doesn't look like much has changed here on our temps. I just want to walk a little closer and look. Yeah, we're still in the low 80s. That 88.6 hasn't changed. That 89.3 never changed. It was momentary, whatever it was. So I'm confident. I think we're going to be okay. It's a little nerve-wracking to see temps that high. And again, there may be a BIOS update that addresses this, or maybe that's their intent. I'll have to talk to the folks at Beelink and see what they have to say about it. In the meantime, once I stop Prime 95, you'll watch these temps here. Watch how fast these temps here drop. Just to give you an idea that it doesn't take much more than that exhale for that CPU to cool down very, very quickly. And you'll see we're dropping quickly here. Just a matter of seconds. And that's all a CPU needs. And under normal use, that will occur naturally. That as you run a piece of software on the computer, it will, at moments, demand more from the CPU and the RAM, and at other moments, demand less. This idea that we're putting 100% workload for 20 minutes on it is very unrealistic, except to a very, very tiny percentage of power users. Okay, with that established, I think I've said it enough times. Haven't I? I think I have. Let's go to Future Mark. Let's see what we have here. We can do a couple things. We have Cinebench. There's 23. Cinebench 23. Let's grab that, put it over here, get an idea of what kind of Cinebench numbers we get. Now the Heaven benchmark is pretty old, but for the sake of keeping all of my testing relevant, I think we'll go ahead and run it, though that should do this very easily. This should not break a sweat. So let's start with Cinebench. We'll see what it does. It's working now. I want you to keep in mind how small this computer is. And I would encourage you to run Cinebench 23 on your own machine just to see how it compares. It's a free download, just Google for it, and you'll see it's a portable application. No installation is necessary. Just copy the files and run the executable. And in just a moment here, we've got our numbers. This is by no means a rocket ship. Let me walk back to the screen here and see what range we're in. I mean, it's showing it's better than a Core i9 9880 and better than a Ryzen 7 1700X CPU, desktop CPU, but not as good as a Threadripper, obviously, even though that's an old Threadripper. but Threadripper's got more cores. And of course, the Threadripper 2990 there at the top, yeah, we're not going to compare to that. So for whatever reason, it wants to run this for 8 minutes, which is a little ridiculous. And it's recognizing our operating system as Windows 10 instead of Windows 11. So this is an older, bit out of date benchmark, and I don't want this to run for 8 minutes. I think that's ridiculous. I thought it would end after 1. Okay, this is just going to keep cycling. I want to stop that. I want to run the next test. I think this is the GPU test. And we'll see how well that onboard GPU is going to... Why is it doing this? Is it not an OpenGL on here? Oh, that's CPU multi-core and CPU single core. Well, I don't want that. Hold on a minute. That is not what I wanted. They've changed this test. Where did that go? Let me go back here, and I guess I'll run the older version. I don't recall R23 doing that before. So let's go back to PC testing software. Let's grab the previous R15. And again, it's an older benchmark, but I need to compare it against what I'm expecting. And in many cases, people are running old software on these things anyway. You're not necessarily running a game that just came out this week. So let's pull this one up, the R15, because I'm familiar with what to expect here. So we'll do the OpenGL test. That's what I was looking for before. I was expecting OpenGL and CPU, and instead I got CPU multi-core and CPU single core. Single core performance is often emphasized in gaming. But that's changing more and more as more games go to multi-core optimizations. But of course, the older games are never going to. One of the issues we have with programs is anybody can write any program in any way they want. There's no rules they have to follow. So some programs are written better, more optimized. Other programs are written in a very lazy, hasty way to keep under budget and get it out as quickly as possible. It can be buggy and finicky depending on what hardware and drivers is running on it. And that is just the development company to blame, not necessarily the computer. Okay, so now we have an OpenGL score. And as you can see, based on the older benchmark numbers of what it's comparing it to, because it is an older benchmark, you'll also see that this CPU test will happen much, much faster because it's nowhere near as intense as release 23. So that's to be expected. In some cases, this may not be fair to put a modern day computer up against the benchmarks of computers from years ago, but it should give you an idea of just how impressive this little machine is compared to a machine that might be like one you have now listed in the specs down below here as examples. Now that being said, we're going to exit this and we're going to go over to my flash drive with utilities again, and we'll run Heaven, which again, older benchmark. It'll sail through Heaven without a problem. What was the other one I used to run? Superposition? I think we can do superposition. That might be a little bit more intense. I'm trying to remember, or was it the spy one? It's been a while since I've done this. I think it's superposition. We'll find out here in a moment. We'll give it something to run anyway. Paul in the chat suggests I run Octane Bench instead, but if I do run Octane Bench, Paul, it dismisses all my prior benchmark scores, and we have to start back over at 0. So I'm not too excited about rushing into that unless I have to. Sergio Kochit says, about someone's earlier question with Linux on the Beelink, he says, I have a Beelink GTR AMD Ryzen 5 3550H with a Radeon Vega 8 graphics APU, and he's dual booting it with Linux Mint, all with no issues at all. All right, well, I appreciate that, and if that person's still watching, I appreciate when folks, other viewers, have information I don't have. Okay, let's see if this is going to work. Okay, we're going to benchmark and run. Yeah, this will be a good benchmark to run. This will get us there, and it's something I've used in the past, so we have something to compare it to. So these load times, these will improve with a faster solid state drive, but only by a few seconds. So if that total was 10 seconds, we might be able to bring that down to 7 or 8 if we want to drop $200-300. I don't know that it's worth it to do it personally, but you know, that's for you to decide. You'll see, you know what, I am probably covering all the specs up with my camera. Let me turn my camera off so you can see all those numbers in the upper right corner. And while this is running, if you have questions for me in the chat, I'm happy to do my best to provide answers if I have them. Joshua Folcomer with a $1 super chat I missed earlier. Thanks, Joshua. Stan Aristoff with a £1.79. Right on. Thank you, Stan. Mike Ely became a member. Welcome to the Tech Club, Mike. Jamie McGregor has been a member now for, what's that say, 6 months? Has that been 6 months? Thank you, Jamie. When you see the 6 or the number next to somebody's name in the chat, that's the minimum amount of time they've been a member. YouTube lets me put in certain numbers or allow for badges at certain milestones. So between 6 months and 12 months, there's no badge other than 6. And you won't get another badge until you're at 12 months. And then you don't get another badge until you're at 24 months and then 36 months. And those numbers over the badge tell me how long you've been a member consecutively. If you were a member for 3 months, then you stopped, and then you started again, your counter starts back at 1. So anybody who's a new member won't have any number, so as not to be confusing. Then I think it goes to 2 after the second month. Then it goes to 6, and then 12, and 24, and 36, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's right.
And that's what YouTube's decided. I have no control over, you know, when I can assign the badges. Ron says he'll be a member for 6 months and 3 weeks. So yeah, so Ron says 2 currently. So when he reaches the 6 month mark, that number will change to a 6. And then it won't change again until he hits the 12th month. And of course it'll say 12. And then it won't change again until we hit 24. And this way I can tell in the chat room by looking at those numbers who's supporting the channel, because I absolutely want to make sure I'm addressing, you know, if there's 100 people asking questions and 6 of them have the gold badge with a number, I want to get to yours first because you guys are supporting me. And it tells me how long you've been a member because that's important to me. Now, when I look at these benchmark numbers here at the end, we finally have something we can compare. And we're looking at a total score 4671. And, you know, to be honest, I can't remember if that's good or not. It was running at 1080p with medium resolution. And of course, the specs of the configuration of the machine are down below here, including our Windows version and build. It still says Windows 10. That's all you need to know about Windows 11, really. It's still just Windows 10. That's why it's being seen as Windows 10. Let me go back and try another benchmark on here. Let's get rid of this one. Let's close that out. And yeah, I think that spy demo is pretty cool. Let's go run that spy demo. I'll just install this right off the flash drive. Okay, so while that installs, and it's going to take a minute. Let me put my camera back on. There we go. Patrick Manny's been a member now for 8 months. Right on. Well, thank you, Patrick. Shamim in the chat says hello to myself in the chat. Welcome in, Shamim. Ron Barnish says he's using his new build at this time. Well, it sounds like he got it running, Ron. Fantastic. I bet you that's going to be a great computer for you for at least the next 8 years. AA in the chat wants to know if I would recommend this mini PC as a living room media center / gaming PC. Absolutely. If you want something this small, I'm not aware of anything that's going to do gaming any better. If you don't want to do the gaming and you just want to do media, then you could save money and get a model with like an i5 or a Ryzen 5, something that'll be the same size, but not have the gaming performance that this has. It also depends on what games you're playing, but overall, if you're looking at this form factor, I'm not aware of a more powerful gaming platform that's this small, unless you go to something like, boy, I'm trying to think if an NVIDIA Shield would even be close. Are they even making those anymore? I can't remember. But then, yeah, I suppose you could do streaming through a Shield. I don't know. I guess that would depend on your personal preference on that. You know, an NVIDIA Shield isn't going to be something you're going to have a full operating system on that you could run Word and stuff, at least to the best of my knowledge. So you lose some of the function of the PC, but you gain more perhaps in the gaming. So it's going to be a trade-off. But I'm trying to remember if they still make them. Do you know they still make the Shield?
I'm not sure.
Google that. I saw something about that I remember.
Yes.
They're still making it? What's it sell for? Dave says, I think you can run an external GPU on this. I think that's possible using the Thunderbolt port, but that external GPU will be 6 times larger than this, potentially, in its case, with a separate power supply. And at that point, it's just a sloppy mess of cables that looks terrible. I know some people do it, but it just seems like it's a horrible way to go about that, in my opinion. Yeah, can you? I imagine with that Thunderbolt 4, yes, you can. Should you? You know, by the time you buy the enclosure and the graphics card, you're going to exceed the $800 that this costs in most cases, easily.
Starts at $124.
125 bucks?
It starts at $124.
Starts at 124 for the Shield? Okay. So I'm sure there's, at that price point, you're not getting much. I don't know. Look it up. If you think that's something of interest to you. I don't know. People that I know that have Shields are using them mostly for media centers. I don't really see many people playing. They sometimes play games on them, but mostly they're using it for things like Plex and stuff like that. Let me take a look here at, yeah, which then means it's not a full functioning PC. It's more like a Fire Stick. It's got what?
The Google Assistant built in.
Oh, okay. It's got Google Assistant built in. All right, let me go over here. Let me launch this. You know, you could use this as a video editing machine if you're a content creator. It's got the power to do it. It's got the power to mix audio if you're doing that. And it's a lot of power in this little box. Of course, I've got a lot of power in the streaming box over here too, but there's a massive price difference. That's a $4,500 box, and it's big and it's heavy. This, on the other hand, is a fraction of that price, a fraction of that size. So I don't think it's fair to compare them, but there is definitely value in each item depending on what your needs are. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. How you value it depends on what your needs are. And we have an update to this. I guess we'll grab that. What I would recommend is don't take my word for it. Go online and look, first of all, look at other YouTube videos and look for other reviews of this product and see what the actual users are saying about it. Now, with this particular model, at least on Amazon, it's too early to see any reviews yet. But I'm sure if I Googled it, I can find early reviews from people who've already purchased them, apart from the content creators. There are some content creators that you're just going to trust more than others, and I'll leave that at your discretion. But Beelink has sent these units out to a number of content creators here on YouTube and probably other platforms as well that I'm not aware of. And we all go about how we introduce a product or evaluate a product in a unique way. And so for some of us, our reviews are going to be more on point to a specific viewer than to another viewer who will completely disagree. So you find that reviewer that tends to have the similar value system that you have, and maybe use that as a basis for deciding if you think it's more likely, if the information provided or the way it's provided is more in line with your values and you have more in common with that creator. On the other hand, you know, looking at independent reviews, look at Reddit discussions, use Google before you make that investment, or buy from Amazon and evaluate it yourself, knowing you can return it within 30 days if you don't like it. So that's also probably the best thing you could do if you're that serious and you think, well, I really think this is something I'm going to like. Make sure when you're buying it from a retailer that it's a retailer that will take returns without restocking fees or hassles or excuses or delays and procrastinations. Or in some cases, expenses requiring you to pay to ship it back. Nothing beats personal experience. And then when you have that personal experience, come back and tell us about it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? And if so, why? You know, we certainly would love to know. Mitch Morrison joins us in the chat. Mitch has his dad joke for today. He says, people think icy is the easiest word to spell. Come to think of it, I see why. That's pretty good. 6:30 is the best time. Hands down.
I still like the ketchup one better though.
Got ketchup in my eye?
Yeah.
Now I have hindsight. Tried to make a reservation at the library, but they're all booked up. John says this looks like it can drive up to 3 displays for office work. That is correct, John. We covered that earlier in the video, but I have the DVR mode disabled. But you will see a link for this product in my video notes, and it will take you to Amazon, where all of that is explained and shown in the product page. Now let me go back to full screen over here. We have a lot of updates to this. It's been a while since I've used this. Man, we have a lot of updates to this. And obviously they're there for a reason. So when I run the test, I want to make sure that it's not going to crash or give us false results. Hey, I see Michael Dane joins us in the chat. Welcome in, Michael. Mark wants to know what mesh router I like. It depends on your budget, Mark, and how many square feet you're trying to cover. I've been using the TP-Link mesh routers here. Recently upgraded from the Deco S4, which I've been using for about 2 years, to the X55. And it's not made a huge difference. The ASUS ET12, if you want to spend $800 to $1,200, is pretty good. Netgear's Orbi system at $1,500 is pretty good, but it might be overkill for most people. If you have a couple of ASUS regular routers, Wi-Fi routers, you can often put them in a mesh mode. Same with TP-Link using Easy Mesh. You can set up your own mesh network using regular Wi-Fi routers. So I don't know. I suppose, you've also got the EERO, the EERO system. It's pretty good. Probably most people it would be more than enough for most people, but it's not the best as far as configuration and upgradability. It's very limited, but most people don't need all those bells, whistles, and features like VPN and all this other stuff. So it kind of depends what your budget is, how many square feet you're trying to cover. And, if you've got an ASUS router now or a TP router now that supports mesh, that you can just add onto it that way as well, which could be cheaper. And you're already familiar with the interface, so you don't have any learning curve there, or very little learning curve, I should say. What were we working with the other day, though? Oh, the Ubiquity Amplify. That I'm not a fan. I think it's overpriced. I think it's a bit like an Apple product. I'm still waiting for these updates. My gosh, so many updates. And can I finally run the test now? Holy cow. Mark Leibowitz in the chat says, I've got 3 clients that are using Beelink mini PCs. 2 are SEI10s and 2 are SER5s. They're great for office work, especially at cluttered desks. So far, so good, and happy to provide updates. Hey, I appreciate that, Mark. I've got a couple of Intel Nooks out at clients right now. 2 at one client and 1 at another. And they're loving them. We haven't had any problems with any of them yet, including the personal Nook that I have from 2013, which still runs every day. But I am getting ready to upgrade it because it's getting a little slow. It's feeling a bit sluggish, but it's more than paid for itself. It paid for itself years ago. It's running Windows 10. Originally, we put Windows 7 on it. It's an i3. It's one of the very first Intel Nooks that came out. It's solid. So I have a lot of confidence in these little Nooks. They run really well. Now, in this case, it's not fair to call this a Nook. It's kind of an Intel branding thing, and this is clearly not Intel. And this is Beelink, and this is not an Intel-based chip. This is AMD. So it just goes to show you the competition can join that game. And I imagine the reliability is going to be about the same, although the proof is in the pudding. So yes, if you have one of these or you've had one, I'd appreciate sharing your experience with us, and we can all share that experience together. Good or bad, it is what it is. John Rogers says hello in the chat. It says it's been a while. I had some health issues, but everything is fine now. I'm glad to hear that. Good to see you again, John. Glad you're feeling better. Am I covering up numbers again? I can't tell. Let me see. No, there's no numbers up there. Now, this is still a pretty intense benchmark even today. And that's supposed to be like slow motion. It's not a slow frame rate. It's supposed to have that matrix effect. So it's going to load the next level. And then, of course, when it's done with all these levels, we'll get a final score. Mark in the chat says he loves Intel Nooks. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm loving all these mini PCs. Intel or AMD. They're, apart from the sticker on the front, it's hard to tell them apart, to be honest. Taco said on your superposition test you just ran on the mini PC, it scored 4671. My desktop PC scored 1897. Oh dear. Well, that's why I encouraged you to download and run that same test for free on your machine before you turn a nose up at the performance of this one. Because there's so many YouTube content creators making videos with extreme hardware that is beyond reasonable in cost, that you might be not judging it correctly. So if we take something you are intimately familiar with, which will be the machine you are using now, and unless you just recently built it, you might be shocked at what your performance numbers are compared to this little thing. You might just assume that your desktop PC is just automatically going to be much faster than that. But until you run the test, and you know, you could be right, your desktop computer may be much faster. For all I know, you've got a 40 series graphics card in it. But most of you probably don't. And most of you out there have machines that are well over 2 years old. And in that case, this will probably blow those out of the water in most cases. But don't take my word for it. Download the benchmark for free. You can Google it to find it. Run it and see what your score is. It is what it is, and at least you'll have a point of reference. You'll be better to understand, much easier for you to understand than imagination of numbers you're seeing on videos. Mike Ladd said he's running a Core i9 9900K. Well, it's still a great chip. There's no reason you shouldn't be running that well into, I'd estimate about 2029. 2028, somewhere in there. I'd probably replace it. But you're about not quite midlife yet. Next year you'll be midlife on that chip. And when I say midlife, I'm not talking about the life of the chip, but the usability of it before it just starts lagging behind in features and security to keep you safe, as well as, you know, the resources that new operating systems consume. Each version of Windows it's way larger in the size of the code, the number of lines of code, millions of lines of code, just as each CPU has, you know, gone from thousands of transistors into millions of transistors, potentially maybe even billions. We'll see where it goes, but it's getting crazy. Sherry McFarland says, I wouldn't dare push my old rig that hard. I'm still nursing it along. It's an old generation 2 i7 PC, but it's still doing what I need it to for now. You know, I mean, it should still run these benchmarks okay. It's just, might take a while. But you know, you have a general idea of what to expect from it. Dave Price says he's got a 5700 XT GPU with an i9 and 32 gigs of RAM with a PCI 4 7 gig OS drive. I don't know how do you get to 7 gigs? Oh, he's probably got an 8 terabyte drive is what I'm guessing. All right, let's see, our final numbers, 2711. So you can see that pushed it pretty darn hard there. Let's take a look if I go full screen on my side so I can look at the details. So the best with this configuration wasn't scoring much higher. CPU score looks great. This feature, I guess you have to pay for the 3D mark. So overall, it's registering as good, okay, as far as gaming goes. And you have to understand how difficult it is to reach good. So of course, if you want to dump a lot of money into a graphics card, you can raise that to best. You can see the little green line doesn't have much further to go based on this configuration. And you can see if you were playing this game as it was displayed on the screen, it's as playable as any other game. So how the machine feels is what's most important. And I'm going to say these benchmark numbers are neither good nor bad. They give us a point of reference and nothing more. So again, how you use your machine, what software, and how you configure that software, that's going to determine whether or not you think it's good or bad. But your thoughts don't make it so. You don't get to just, you don't get to just make a conclusion that's universal for everybody. This is great. Everybody will love this. No. This is terrible. Everybody will hate this. No. You can only speak for yourself. And I'd like you to. I'd very much like to hear what your personal opinion is and why, if you have hands-on experience with it. If you don't have any hands-on experience with it, then your opinion's irrelevant because it's all based on nothing but your imagination and conclusions. And I have found in many cases when people make up their minds based on what they've read or seen online, that when you actually put the product in front of them, you get a completely different answer. Very rarely do people stick to their previous conclusion from something that they've never actually had experience with, unless they're just stubborn. And then we run into people like that too, that won't have an open mind. They've made up their mind and that's the way it's going to be. And you know what? That's okay, as long as we recognize the source of the information. And at the end of the day, all I'm trying to do is make an introduction. I am not paid by Beelink to bring this video to you. There's no sponsorship here. I'm genuinely curious. I asked them for me if I could review it. I'm genuinely interested in mini PCs. That's why you've seen so many. Not a single mini PC manufacturer has paid me, nor have I signed any contracts or commitments to any obligations to any of these manufacturers. I genuinely want to see the differences, the different price points, the different sizes, the different amounts of noise or the number of ports that they have. The little features like being able to change the cover to a different color. That's pretty unique. I've not seen that from any other mini PC manufacturer except Beelink. And I find that interesting, and I thought you would find it interesting too. I'm just here to make an introduction, right? You wouldn't know to buy a product if you didn't know the product existed. I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should. That is ultimately your decision to make. Rather, it's quite the opposite. I'm encouraging you that if you think that this is attractive, that you might enjoy it. And I've introduced enough of it to you to convince you that that's still a possibility that you're going to enjoy it, then buy it. And buy it from a retailer where if you don't like it, you can return it, like Amazon. You got 30 days. And then let me know. Leave a comment on the video. Share your experience. Was it good? Was it bad? And then let's see what the consensus of people say. If 10 of you buy this and 8 of you love it and 2 of you hate it, I think we can draw a conclusion there, can't we? On the other hand, if 10 of you buy it and 5 like it and 5 don't like it, again, I think we can draw a conclusion there that it's something you have to decide for yourself. And if 10 of you buy it and 10 of you don't like it, we can also draw a very clear conclusion. But if I honestly thought that was a possibility, I wouldn't take the time to show the computer off. I just wouldn't do it, because why would I? It's got to have the potential. But at the end of the day, until it's in your hands and the way you use it and what you expect of it, and at that price point, what do you think? So I'm very curious to hear back from anybody of any mini PC, not just this one. If you've owned any or currently own any, please share your experience. How reliable has it been? Do you regret buying it? Do you wish you had another? Would you like to upgrade it? How does this one look to you? Just curious. Get a consensus of what's out there. Everybody's different. And, I'm always after a consensus. I'm not interested in what an individual thinks. I'm interested in overall what most individuals think. And based on that is how I run my business. It's how I'm able to deliver what most customers expect and have a good customer experience with regards to service, quality, price. It's all sort of generalized based on what the majority of needs are. And when somebody has unrealistic needs or they have an unrealistic budget, I'll generally decline the work. Let somebody else deal with that stuff. You know what I mean? So in any event, that's the motivation behind making the videos. I'll reach out to Beelink and ask them about any compatibility issues regarding adding a second NVMe drive. And we'll follow up with regards to those temps with Beelink as well to see what they're using to measure the temps, if my temps are normal or not normal. And I'll let you know what Beelink says when I hear back from them. They're usually pretty responsive. Takes about a business day after I send the email. And they're in Asia, so if I send the email in the afternoon, it's their afternoon in the middle of the night here. So I usually have a response the next day, unless it's a weekend. So I expect I'll get a response in clarifying this information from their perspective. Maybe something they're aware of, maybe something that's unique to this model or to the one that I got sent. We'll have to see if this is normal or known, and I'll let you know what they tell me. Daco wants to know, how long will the cooling fans last and how difficult is it to replace them? The cooling fans should last the life of the unit. The Intel NUC that I have from 2013 is still on its original fan, but I did have a NUC where the fan went out and it was no big deal to replace it, but it was kind of hard to source it. So if you're concerned about the cooling fans going out, one thing I would consider is, what is the warranty of the unit when you buy it? And if you buy it at a place like Amazon, you're often offered an extended warranty. Now, if you buy the extended warranty, which I wouldn't do unless I'm spending $1,000 or more dollars, but you know, when you're at 800, you're pretty close. If you buy that extended warranty, then you have peace of mind for the total length of whatever warranty you've got, that that fan is guaranteed to work. If not, they'll replace it, and it's on them for whatever the costs are to replace it. Overall, these units are very easy to get into, and the replacement of these fans is very simple. However, finding the fan might be difficult. What I ended up doing is I ended up going on eBay, and this is on an Intel NUC, not on a Beelink unit. In most cases, if it was Beelink, I'd just reach out to Beelink support. But in the case of Intel, the NUC was like 3 or 4 years old, and the fan didn't go out, but it was making some noise, and it was only making the noise at startup. If you just left the thing on, it just stayed quiet. It's only at startup it was doing it, and that's usually the sign of a bearing failing. Now, out of 4 or 5 NUCs I've had, there's only been one that's exhibited that, and I don't know why, but it happened. I could not find the fan. I ended up going on eBay, and I found the fan that I think it was overpriced. I think it was $20 or $25, and it was shipping from China. I couldn't find the fan locally for under $50, and I wasn't going to put that much money into a fan. It's a $3 fan all day long. And then the person that was selling them had multiples. They didn't have just one, and they were supposedly brand new. So I waited. It took 21 days for that to arrive from China, with my fear being that it's not going to be good or it's going to be a knockoff. Well, anyway, it turned out to be great. So I thought, well, I better order a spare from the same seller, because I don't know what's going to happen if I need another one. And, 21 days later, I got my spare, and it's still sitting in a spare parts bin somewhere in case I need one. But it's specific to the NUC. It is not likely going to be the same fan here. So basically, you should never have a fan problem for the life of the unit. And if you were, apart from getting the actual part, which I couldn't say what that's going to be like 5 years from now, the actual replacement is relatively simple. And that's true of pretty much any fan on any computer or any device, really. Power supplies, power supply fans, CPU cooling fans on desktops, laptops. You do need to blow them out from time to time if you want their life to be extended. I'd say at least once a year, blow air through it. You don't have to open it up. You just blow air through the vents and get all the dust out of it. That'll extend the life of the fan. I appreciate the question, Daco. It's a fair question. I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody can tell you how long anything's going to last. I can't tell you how long you're going to last, or me. We don't know. Some of us last longer than others. Some for unknown reasons and some for known reasons. The same can be said of computer hardware. The good news is these things are more reliable today, in my experience, than they've ever been in my lifetime. So the frequency of these things needing repair or replacement is significantly lower than it used to be, but it's not a perfect world. Dave Price said I'd use it for Linux and I won't game that much on it. Yeah, well, it sounds like from another viewer they put Linux Mint on it without a problem. So it seems like it's possible. Like I said, I'm not a Linux user, so I can't advise you one way or another on that. But, you know, what I would do if I was going to install Linux on it is I would make an image of the current Windows operating system it comes with and just move that over to an external drive. And then I would feel free to do whatever I wanted to with this thing, knowing that I could always restore and recover from my image and put it right back to the way it was. So if there were any regrets that I could, you know, have a safety net to fall back on. And that would give me the confidence to boldly change anything I wanted to on it with regards to software. Will in the chat room says, is this as fast as an i5 CPU? This is much, much, much faster. This has more cores, more cache, and higher frequency, much higher frequency. Yeah, an i5 is kind of a mid-range CPU, or Ryzen 5. And on this, we're on a Ryzen 7. Did I say Ryzen 7? Yeah, it's a Ryzen 7 6800. I mean, it's going to run at almost 5,000 megahertz. It's like, what is it, 4,700, 4.7 gig? It's a rocket. So yeah, you can't, it wouldn't be fair to compare an i5 to this. This will smoke that any day of the week. Okay, any final questions or we will say goodbye. We've been going about 2.5 hours on this live broadcast and I try to keep them around 2 hours. But I will stick around as long as you guys have questions for me. Is it possible to connect an external GPU to this Beelink? Well, it does have Thunderbolt 4, so that being the case, the answer should be yes. If you have a Thunderbolt 4 external GPU enclosure, that's pretty much, as far as I know, the way they connect. I mean, if you want to spend $1,200 on a GPU for your $800 computer, don't let me get in your way. It'd be cheaper for you to just buy a desktop and put a graphics card in it. But I mean, I think people that do that are putting dimes above dollars, but, you know, it makes no sense to me why anybody would do that. And it's very inconvenient to have to bulk carry around a little computer and your GPU and a power supply for the GPU and a power supply for the computer and the cable to connect them up. But hey, if you want to do that, don't let me get in your way. With the Thunderbolt 4 connection, absolutely you can do that. Winston Liu with a $2 Canadian contribution. Thank you, Winston. Ray is saying goodbye, and so is the Greek. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Starshine says, sold. Oystein. There's Oystein joining us from Norway. Always good to see our friend Oystein. We don't have many viewers in Norway, so I think it's pretty cool. I'm using a Beelink SEI12, he says, with Windows 11 Pro and Linux Mint 21.1, and it works like a charm. The only issue I'm having is dual monitor setup in Linux Mint. Well, you have to let us know if you get that figured out. All right, guys. Well, I guess I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So I appreciate everybody that hung out for today's broadcast. If you've missed any part of it, it will be available to rewatch after YouTube processes it. If you try and watch it too soon after YouTube, after the video ends, you will not see chat room playback and you will not see the video available in HD until after YouTube processes it. So anytime you're watching a video that was previously live and you're wondering where the chat room went or why the resolution looks blurry, usually there's a message that YouTube says, but not always, that the video is still being processed. So give it a few hours and come back. All right, that'll wrap it up. Thanks, you guys. Oh, wait a minute. Sherry says, I like the Intel NUC, the big one I showed with the skull on the side around Christmas time, because it's got that RTX 3070 chip on it and the i7 Intel CPU. Did you ever figure out why the Cat5 cable isn't clicking in? I haven't had time to go back to it. What I need to do is I actually have to put it up here on the table under some bright lights, get a nice close-up camera, and film it and send it over to the folks at Minis Forum who make that computer, so they can identify if there's something I'm missing or something I can address myself, or if I have to send it back to them, because they're not aware of any issue like that. They've asked me for photos, and I figure photos aren't going to cut it. I really need to film it and put a private video up for them to watch it, because it's a long distance to ship it back. And I hope it's something I can address myself as a technician. In the meantime, it's not like the cable just falls out on its own, but if somebody were to pull on it, yes, it would just come right out. So when I plug the Cat5 cable into that unit, it does not click, but it seats. It's supposed to click. And it's a very minor little issue, but one that shouldn't exist. And I don't know if something's warped or something happened in shipping, or if there's something that I can do. It just feels like it's not going in far enough, but it's really hard for me to tell. I'll let the experts look at the video. I'll get a nice close-up, brightly lit video of what the issue is, and hopefully their engineers can explain it to me, and we'll decide what to do. And I'll give you an update when I know, but that may be a few months away. I'm still very buried, and that's a very minor issue, but I appreciate the follow-up on that and the reminder that's something I need to do. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Enjoy your Friday the 13th. Thanks to the camera girl for the close-ups. Thanks to you guys for watching, all my friends in blue and all my supporters. Appreciate you very much. Those of you who are not blue, hey, I hope you will continue to join us and be friendly and kind in the chat so that I can start to recognize you. And when I do, I'll start turning you blue. And I will see you all again every Monday. I do a members-only broadcast. That's at 1 p.m. Phoenix time. That's currently 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and it is for members only. These are not, the Monday videos are not for the public. They're for the members of the tech club that we have here. And you'll see that by the subscribe button. If you hit subscribe, it becomes like a join button, or you should see join somewhere. And by joining that and paying a fee per month, you get access to exclusive content, which is not quite as chaotic as my regular content, because I only have a handful of supporters. And so it gives us a little time together, and rightfully so, because they're paying for that. And so every Monday at 1 o'clock, that's for the supporters. And then every Friday at 1 o'clock, my time, Phoenix time, are my live shows. Anything I do Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday is just as my schedule permits while I'm trying to run a business at the same time. Very rarely I do a video on a Saturday or a Sunday, but it does happen as time permits. But the weekends usually don't permit for that, but sometimes, on a rare occasion. So if you want to know what my schedule is, that's pretty much how it works. I go live anytime I can with a permanent schedule, Monday at 1 for supporters, Friday at 1 for everybody else. So I hope you'll join me then. In the meantime, until I see you next time, bye for now.